Welcome to a new Daily Top Askreddit video. Today's topic.
What movie is really sad when told from the villain's perspective? Mrs. Doubtfire, because imagine how scared Pierce Brosnan was when Mrs. Doubtfire tried to kill him. With Pepper. Classic 90s trope where the new partner is actually a lovely person whose life gets destroyed so the exes can get back together. Edit. Yes, I have been reminded that they don't get back together in Mrs. Doubtfire. Still a trope that Mrs. Doubtfire plays into, but thanks for the correction. I mean, thankfully they didn't get back together in this case. I always really liked that about Mrs. Doubtfire. Baby's father in Dirty Dancing. Dude just wants to have a nice family vacation. Right? Heaven forbid he protests against his 17-year-old daughter getting seduced by the 25-year-old resort dance instructor. The dad has to medically treat Johnny's ex-GF for an infection after a botched abortion. Of course he doesn't want his daughter around getting involved. Worse, he wasn't just a dance instructor. The dialogue implies he's banging hot moms for money while giving private dance lessons, IRC. Anyone over the age of like 25 completely understands the father's perspective. I recently rewatched The Little Mermaid and, well, let's just say I was rooting for her father rather than the 16-year wanting to elope with a person she saw for like a minute. That said, Triton doesn't really handle the situation well. No. Baby's father is a hero of the movie. He saves the life of the girl that got a bad back alley abortion, takes his family on a nice vacation and is protective of his daughter. When faced with the truth about the stricken girl, he apologizes to Johnny. The economic class system is the real villain in this flick. The help at the resort are not as human as the paying guests. I was just a teen when I first saw that movie in the theater, and the scene where the father apologizes to Johnny was a core memory moment. Admit when you're wrong, for some reason it stuck with me and shaped how I handle moments like that. B-movie Tears of Joy. A bee stole this man's girlfriend. This sums up the movie for anybody who hasn't watched it. https www.youtube.com/watch. V = EZBQMGCLD30. It's a wild ride. I shrugged it off years ago as just being some kids movie Jerry Seinfeld felt like making. I didn't realize how insane the plot is. The courtroom scenes, the romance, the wild ending, snipers. That fucking scene where they shot Winnie the Pooh was crazy. Pirates of the Caribbean, Davy Jones. His duty was to take care of the souls lost at sea. He did it knowing that his lover, Calypso, is waiting for him on the island since he can only set foot on land once every 10 years. After he did his duty for 10 years, she wasn't there. He felt betrayed and descended into rage. His story ended when Calypso aided the other pirate lords against him. They beat him and stabbed his heart. His last word was, Calypso, before falling into the depths of the sea. Really sad when you look at it from his perspective. This is a good one. The entire Pirates trilogy is an underrated gem. Deep world building, rich characters, mind-blowing sets, and some of the best scenery chewing caught on camera. Jaws. Bruce is just trying to be a shark, man. The real villain of Jaws is the mayor who kept the beaches open to protect the town's tourism income when he'd been warned there was a man-eating shark in the water. The real villain of Jaws 2 is the power of incumbency, when that same mayor is still the mayor. How bad a job does someone have to do to not get re-elected? Prince Nuada from Hellboy, The Golden Army. He's the prince of a dying race of Fae. Has to see his father lead his kind into darkness and obscurity. And then see humanity tear down everything he loved for their own greed, expansion. His speech about how the world will never see the likes of the elemental forest god was heartbreaking. Demon, what are you waiting for? This is what you want, isn't it? Look at it. The last of its kind. Like you and I. If you destroy it, the world will never see its kind again. You have more in common with us than with them. God. In that moment, I would have given anything for Hellboy to save the monster. Screw the city, forgot whatever they were fighting about. I just wanted him to protect the old forest god. For the fact that they seem sort of cheesy on a surface level. Those movies actually really pack a punch. Love the art and designs. The characters are goofy but sort of grounded. I'm sad they rebooted it, rather than continue with Ron Perlman. They seem sort of cheesy on a surface level. Those movies actually really pack a punch. Oh, I see you're familiar with the work of Guillermo del Toro. Seriously, this dude had me crying about giant robots fighting kaiju. He deservedly won an Oscar for doing The Little Mermaid in a secret government facility. Even Mimic was an endearing thriller about how fucked up bugs are. I don't think anyone else in Hollywood right now is as good at taking an absurd premise to the most touching conclusion. John Hurt killed it, too. There are things that go bum in the night. We are the ones who bump back. The Land Before Time. That T-Rex just needed to eat. In the midst of an ecological collapse, a desperate carnivore pursues its prey for miles, only to be crushed and drowned by them. A baby shark tooth cries in the darkness, waiting for their mother who will never return home to them. Austin Powers. Dr. Evil's upbringing is tragic. The details of my life are quite inconsequential. My father was a relentlessly self-improving boulangerie owner from Belgium with low-grade narcolepsy and a penchant for buggery. My mother was a 15-year-old French prostitute named Chloe with webbed feet. My father would womanize. He would drink. He would make outrageous claims like he invented the question mark. Sometimes, he would accuse chestnuts of being lazy. The sort of general malaise that only the genius possess and the insane lament. My childhood was typical. Summers in Rangoon. Luge lessons. In the spring, we'd make meat helmets. When I was insolent, I was placed in a burlap bag and beaten with reeds. Pretty standard, really. At the age of 12, I received my first scribe. At the age of 14, a Zoroastrian named Vilma ritualistically shaved my testicles. There really is nothing like a shorn scrotum. It's breathtaking. I suggest you try it. I've not seen that movie that many times. And I probably haven't seen it in at least a decade. But I feel like I know particular enunciation and facial expression in that monologue. It's so good. Sound of Music, not the Nazis obviously, but the Baroness. Imagine you're a wealthy, savvy, child-free woman open-minded enough to date a sulking widower with a billion children he ignores in favor of travel and partying, in other words, your lifestyle. You're not into kids but you try to be a presence in their lives when he finally deigns to introduce you to them. Same time he announces that he's marrying you. So he's a super great father. You put on a cheerful face anyway. And when it's apparent the kids hate you, you are a stranger after all. You consider sending them to boarding school where they might benefit from, say, structure and attention and schooling that they are not getting at home from their father, endless rotating nannies. Then the super virginal, younger au pair moves in. And your boyfriend suddenly decides he is totally into being father of the year again after his Austrian Rumspringer, and dumps you. https www.mcsweeneys.net/articles/I-regret-to-inform-you-that-my-wedding-to-captain-von-trap-has-been-c. You'll also be glad to know I have retained custody of the captain's hard-drinking gay friend, Max. Amazing. I think it would have been particularly helpful for the eldest daughter, who seems intent on losing her virginity to the mailman. Skull. Flunked out of nun school. Gets me every time, tears of joy. As I recall, the boarding school was also in Switzerland and this was right at the cusp of World War II. The kids wouldn't have had to flee the Alps on foot if they'd been safely out of the country before that. If it helps, the real von Trapp children did not flee the Alps on foot. After Hitler annexed Austria, the family went on a concert tour of Europe, toured the United States for several months, returned to Europe and toured there, then returned to the United States for good after applying for immigrant status. Les Miserables. Javert was born inside a jail and we see repeatedly how unforgiving Paris is to children without a support system and the destitute. He miraculously manages to work his way from that to a respectable middle-class job. And that's before Jean Valjean shows up and becomes the greatest failure of his career eventually, driving him to suicide. I don't know if reading The Brick colors my opinion of the movie, musical. But I feel that Javert is highly misunderstood as a character. In a way, he's also a victim of the time. Like you mentioned, he was born in jail, was part of a marginalized people and rose in the ranks of the law enforcers. Where could I read The Brick? Nah. Javert keeps only finding Valjean after he's just saved a man from being crushed to death or refusing to let someone else face the prison system in his place or bringing groceries to the elderly or saving penguins from the penguin juicing machine of Macquarie Island. And his only concern is enforcing the letter of the law. He goes completely unhinged when he finally realizes that criminals can reform and be a net benefit to society. Javert is even the villain in his own story. And Javert agrees. In the book he even writes a letter in an attempt to reform the police before he offs himself. He's the villain of the story. But that doesn't make him less sad. At least to me, this is a man who the violent gangs of Paris know by name. This guy cares about the law and thinks of it as the only means of keeping society running. When thinking he made a mistake of even suspecting an official as being corrupt and being wrong meant he needed to be punished. He's wrong, of course. And seeing how wrong he was for his entire life meant his end. That's pretty sad. If you think about it, most romance movies that center on the main character being in love with a person in a relationship, the villain is a person acting defensive and jealous, because the main character keeps trying to make moves on their partner and their partner allows it. Their partner then emotionally cheats and leaves them for the person they shouldn't be worried about. But that's okay because they're not the MC and they were mean a few times to the MC for being a skeeve. This is similar to Carey Elwes' perspective in Liar Liar 2. You've had a legitimate, mostly positive relationship with your girlfriend and are now at the point where you're trying to get to know her son. There's a lot of trust invested by this point. You've accepted that her ex-husband is an important part of her life and are happy with the arrangement of her son dividing time between you and his biological father. In other words, you're a pretty mature family man. Except her ex-husband starts crossing boundaries and trying to convince your girlfriend to get back together with him. You don't always realize what's going on, but you get the feeling that some sort of undermining is going on between him and their son. Meanwhile, your girlfriend is becoming more and more emotionally torn because her ex-husband keeps breaking promises and disappointing her son, but equally tries to undermine you to her and beg for further chances. This culminates in the terrifying face of Jim Carrey appearing outside your plane window during high-speed takeoff, eyes wide open and manically shouting, on the day you were originally going to move city as a new family. Yet despite this, you retain a godly amount of humility and gracefully back out of the relationship, knowing that Jim has won over the family and that it wouldn't be fair on any parties for the farce to continue. Yeah, Cary Elwes is intentionally goofy at times and jumped the gun on the relationship. But the man is a bit of a saint for putting up with that. I never disliked his character in a heel sense. But seeing you write all this out feels like he dodged a bullet. I mean, maybe not. If Jim Carrey's character wants no part of his ex and child, then Cary probably ends up pretty happy. But then there's no movie. Cough the B movie cough.